some brilliant guests tonight.
The reason why we are on lockdown has nothing to do with the fact of building our immune system.
Try something else for a bit, then stop. So they've been using us all as guinea pigs.
What I will do differently now is that I won't feel like I haven't got a voice because I'm not Black.
Everybody's going to be dead at the same time.
I have never spoken about Black on Black because it's a nonsense, because most crimes are committed by non-Blacks.
Let that child go to school and come back with anything and see me.
The disclaimer for the Pick a Topic with Sam and Guest show. The opinions aired on this chat show are not necessarily the views of the presenter. The information on this chat show is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this chat show are for general information purposes only. This chat show makes no representation and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy of information on or available through this chat show, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained from or through this chat show with other sources and review all information regarding any medical condition or treatment with your physician.
Well, it's a good evening from me and welcome to Pick a Topic with Sam and Guest for Series 2. We are going to be talking it's going to be all about relationships. We have got our relationship coach expert here with us today. His name is Nigel Beckles. And rather than me tell you about him, I'm going to bring him on right this moment and I'm going to ask him to tell you about himself. Hello, Nigel. How are you today?
Good evening. I am well, thank you.
Excellent. Now, Nigel, we did this last week and it worked really well. So rather than me tell everybody about you and how you got into this type of work, would you mind telling them? I mean, did you experience this firsthand? Is that why you got into it? What was it?
Well, in terms of relationships, at the end of the day, my observation is that most people, the two major issues they have in their life is money and relationships. So that is how I really started doing the research in terms of my first book. And that was really about trying to figure out myself, how come I'd made so many mistakes on my life journey. So that's how I started out. So the book took me 5 years. It was 5 years of research, because relationships, as you know, is a very, very deep subject. So depends how far down the rabbit hole you want to go.
Right. Okay. I mean, I want to ask you a little bit more of a personal question here, Nigel. Well, I guess it's not personal, but because you're well educated in this area, I want to ask you, is there such a thing as a narcissist who's a healthy narcissist?
Yes, because at the end of the day, everyone has narcissism in them. There is such a thing as healthy narcissism. So if you've got good confidence or high self-esteem, you've got good emotional intelligence, all of those things are healthy. It's when the narcissism is toxic and it's disturbing or destroying other people's lives, that's when you've got an issue.
Okay. And what exactly is a narcissist? What exactly is it?
Well, narcissism, if someone goes for official diagnosis, which is rare, but basically narcissistic personality disorder, as defined by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Personality Disorders. Basically, it's measured on a spectrum of 9 traits. So if someone was to go for a diagnosis and they scored 5 traits or more out of 9 of the main traits, they would officially be diagnosed as a narcissist.
Okay, and do you know a little bit about how they go about their tests? Because it astounds me. I'm sort of like, how do they diagnose them? Because like you said, there's a thing called a healthy narcissist, and then there's the toxic narcissist. And I'm guessing most toxic narcissists won't actually admit to being that in the first place.
Well, it depends why they go for a diagnosis. So, for example, as you know, I do a podcast series and I have guests on who have experienced abusive relationships. So I had a particular guest on, Marcia Hilton, and the narcissist she was involved with, he had actually been diagnosed, but he was ex-army. So for him to exit the army and receive his benefits, he had to undergo a psychological test. So that's how come he got the test, as it were. But in terms of diagnosis, I mean, basically the psychologist will go through the 9 traits. So, for example, the 9 traits, off the top of my head, let me think. Arrogance and domineering, grandiosity, preoccupation with success and power, believe they're unique, strong sense of entitlement, requires excessive admiration, exploits others, envious of others, and a lack of empathy. So that's the 9.
That was 10, I'm sure. I was counting.
So yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't expect people to remember the 9 off the top of their head, because I struggle with it sometimes. But if someone was to Google 9 main traits of narcissism, they'll find it online. It's very easy information to look up.
Okay, thank you so much, Nigel. You've already taught me a lot in that short space of time, and I'm sure you've just taught a lot of the viewers something, in that short space of time. But we do have other guests with us tonight, and I want to start bringing them on. And first person that I'm going to bring on is Ruthie. So let's bring Ruthie on. How you doing, Ruthie?
Hi, good evening. How are you doing? I'm very well.
Brilliant. And then we have Leanne. How you doing, Leanne?
I'm doing well. Hi, everybody.
Excellent. And then we have got Mr. Dave Vital.
Oh, hi there. I was just looking in the mirror.
Bless. And we also got Isabel Roberts. But at the moment, her camera's off, so I'm not sure where she's gone. So I'm just going to remove you again. And when we see you later, we will bring you on. Okay, so I would like to ask, I guess I'd like to start with yourself, Ruth, and just ask you, have you come up against narcissism at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm trying to think of the very few relationships where there hasn't been an element of narcissism.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Is that usually the case, Nigel, that you always experience that in a relationship? Because Ruth is just saying there hasn't been a relationship that she's been in that hasn't had an element of it. And I just want to say hello to Dorrit Brown, by the way.
Well, what Ruthie says is not unusual in the sense that it depends on your upbringing. So, for example, for myself, one of my parents had very strong narcissistic traits. So when you're a child growing up with a parent such as that, then you are conditioned to consider behavior that is probably or possibly toxic or not very nice as being normal. So then you become an adult, and when you get involved with somebody who's got toxic narcissism, it can actually feel quite familiar, because obviously you're used to that type of behavior. It's not behavior you should be accepting. And so that's one part of it. The other part of it is narcissists are very good at what they do. like many other types of abusers. They can be quite charming, charismatic, etc. And that's how they suck people in.
Right. Okay. All right, Dave, what's your take on narcissism, and have you ever experienced it?
Okay, I have to say, when you rang me up to have a chat about this, I had a completely different view of what a narcissist was. I knew the Greek myth about the guy who falls in love with his own reflection, and as a result, he wasted away. I now know, and was no more because of a preoccupation with his own image. Now it seems like it's a much wider title. It covers a lot of different things, and I was quite worried because I could see a lot of things in there that it could be applied to me.
Right.
So yeah.
Like what would you say could apply to you? That's
it. Dear. I might have to ask Nigel to give us a couple of those definitions again. Could you do that?
Well, that would depend on what definition you suspect may apply to you in terms of toxic narcissism and in terms of the 9 main traits. Right. But as you said, you mentioned narcissist earlier, but I should say the word narcissism and narcissist, it's bandied around a little bit too freely in these times, in my opinion, by people who don't really understand what they're talking about. Not to be condescending, but at the end of the day, throwing around the label, oh, this person's a narcissist, because you don't like them, or because they might be arrogant, or they might get on your nerves, that's not really helpful.
Yeah. It certainly seems to have gone a long way. There's nothing wrong with a bit of self-love and maybe a little, time spent on your appearance. You like the way you look. You have to give yourself a bit of love, and I don't think anything's wrong with that. When it comes to the point where you're self-obsessed, to the point where you don't even think about other people, you don't care about other people, then that's a problem, obviously. So if I have any of those traits, they're in small quantities, and I do check myself. So no, I don't qualify, I think.
Great. Glad to hear it. Okay, Isabel, thank you very much. You are back with us. Okay, so Izzy,
I'm here. I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Izzy, have you experienced narcissism at all?
Well, I listened very interesting to what you said, but I think narcissism is essentially part of everybody. Everybody's got elements of narcissistic traits. It depends what measure. And in experiencing narcissism, I see it, please take it with a pinch of salt. In our industry, Sam and I, Dave, I'm not sure about the other lady, it's almost
I'm going to have in here because
what we do in terms of being entertaining.
Izzy, your microphone is really playing up and we can't hear you properly. So I'm going to have to get you to leave for a moment. Maybe you can sort that out and then you can come back. Okay, so Leanne, have you experienced narcissism? Have you come across it?
I have actually. I had a very good friend, one that I would consider my best friend for a while, that I think has a very strong, almost toxic type narcissism. A lot of the qualities that Nigel hit on, she had, and it was one of those things that until it got to a breaking point, it was this weird cyclical pattern that we were getting into where I would get fed up with giving 100% into a friendship and then kind of getting nothing back. And then it's kind of like, then it would be pulled back in, or there'd be good moments or good memories or something, or, we went out and had a really great time, and you kind of get back into that cycle again. And then, you do that so often, and then eventually you just think, oh God, this is not good for me. This is not good for them. And so I have experienced that a little bit. Thankfully, I've never had to deal with any extreme narcissism or toxic narcissism in a romantic relationship, but as a friend platonic level, I have had that. So, and it does get complicated, and sometimes when I look back, I think, oh, how did I not see this sooner? Or how did I not get this? I wish I would have watched last week's episode back in the day when I was friends with her, because the red flags was really good, by the way. But it just has, when I look at it now, I just think, oh, how did I not see this? How did I not see that this is actually hurting me? How did I not understand what was going on? I consider myself a smart person. I consider myself a nice person. How could this have happened?
Right. But the thing is that if you become a victim, my understanding of a narcissist, people often blame themselves, or sometimes people blame the victim. And I'm going to throw this back at you, Nigel. That's not the case, because narcissists are very clever and they're very good at, I think the term is called hoovering you in.
Well, the Hoover is a term used when they suck you back in after they've left a relationship.
Okay.
In terms of that. In terms of getting involved with a narcissist on a relationship level, well, people shouldn't beat themselves up about that. I see a lot of people beat themselves up because I've got a support group for survivors and victims of abuse, and I belong to many others, but I have spoken to people who have been involved with narcissists in terms of a relationship. I've spoken to psychologists, qualified psychologists who teach narcissism. I've spoken to coaches. I've spoken to therapists. So no one's immune just because someone that could be highly qualified in their particular area. That's not going to make you immune.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's more about how they operate and how they actually entice people into a relationship before their mask falls off.
Right. And am I correct in saying, Nigel, with narcissists, I know it's probably unique to the person, the individual, but is there sort of a time frame where the mask falls off?
Well, that's like asking how long's a piece of string.
I guess.
Because at the end of the day, everyone's different, aren't they? So, it could be, I mean, the research says the average relationship for a narcissist lasts 2 years to 2.5 years. Because one of the things about them, they have got a very low boredom threshold.
Right.
So they tend to get bored. But it depends what else they're getting out of the relationship, or the manipulationship, as I call it.
Okay, that's a good name for it, or situationship, or something else. Okay, so I'm going to bring Izzy back on because I am interested to hear what she has to say, and I think she sorted herself out. So you were saying, Izzy, let's unmute you here. Hello? Hello? Izzy? Okay, so basically, I don't think we're going to be able to have Izzy with us today. She's having technical problems. We'll see if we can get Izzy back on another show. Right, we're going to open the discussion, just throw it right open. Everyone just, speak with Nigel in regards to narcissism, anything you want to know about that. And also, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, do send your messages in. You can start doing that from now and start interacting with us. But after we will go for a commercial break, and after that, we will come back and we will have the live call-in service where you can be anonymous if you like and ask any relationship question at all. Right. So, Ruth, I want to quickly ask you, do you feel, because you said there isn't a relationship that you've had that you don't think there's not been a bit of narcissism in, do you think that narcissists are attracted to you? And Nigel, is that a possibility? I can't hear you, Nigel.
Sorry. Narcissists will target anyone. You have to understand with narcissists, their relationships are transactional. So when they target somebody, it's got nothing to do with love or having good intentions. Basically, they will enter a relationship purely for what they can get out of it.
Right. Okay. All right. So, Ruth, elaborate, if you don't mind, on what you were saying earlier.
Yes, I was saying that that elements of it, because one of the things that I can recall quite of one particular relationship was that nothing was ever his fault. Nothing was ever his fault, and he didn't own his own thing. So if he did something wrong, he would try to find a way to make it be because of me or something that I did. I mean, I'm not saying that I took it, because there's no way, but that's why the relationship got into difficulty, because that person, he just did not own. I don't want to use the word that I want to use.
Okay, he just didn't own up to.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the elements of it was when he was doing stuff, he would then, if I pointed something out, then silent treatment.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and at one point it got to the stage where I thought, okay, oh good, oh all right, I'm gonna get this silent treatment. I'm gone. It gave me an excuse to go out with my friends. So I mean, it was really difficult, because one thing is that I did find that you could tell when they're not getting their own way, they switch.
Oh God,
and
yeah.
you found that you're starting to tippy toe around them, and I didn't like that, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to be honest here. I was in a narcissistic relationship and I didn't even realize. It was when I was younger. It must have been probably about 15, maybe even 20 years ago. Yeah, maybe about 20 years ago. And like you say, I got a lot of silent treatment. The person was absolutely never wrong. They always had an answer. I actually began to feel like it was me and I was the problem and I was causing the problem. And maybe I just need to be more mindful. But this person was literally a Jekyll and Hyde. And even after the relationship, even like we're talking about years after the relationship, I would meet or come across this person and they will still try to treat me in the same way and will get quite annoyed if I didn't pay them the attention that they wanted. And I can guarantee even to this day, because it only happened a few years ago, well, a couple of years ago, I was in the same vicinity working with that person for a while, and they became Jekyll and Hyde, even threw a few threats in, you know, and I thought, wow, okay, when I've come off of this particular job, we won't be talking. Who knows? They might be watching. They might even know who they are. But at the end of the day, I've not mentioned any names. And quite frankly, I don't care, because I think it's just bad behavior and spoiled behavior. I don't know. Nigel, is it that they're sick? I have to ask.
Well, okay. So when I've done the research, and I've been researching this for the best part of 15 years, there isn't a definitive answer as to what creates narcissistic personality disorder. Some researchers will say, oh, it's genetics. Other researchers will say it's environment, how they've been brought up, in terms of they may have been abused as a child or suffered parental abandonment. Other researchers will say it's a combination of both environment and genetics. But in layman's terms, if you're dealing with a toxic narcissist, you are dealing with a child operating in an adult body. That is what you're dealing with. Okay. Because effectively their emotional development kind of seizes up around between 5 and 7 years old. That's not to say that they can't be intelligent and they can't have great jobs. I mean, obviously they like positions of power. But yes, it's basically you're dealing with an adult who's an emotional child. Hence you get the sulking, hence you get the silent treatment, hence you get the tantrums, and so it goes on. And I would like to say quickly, because in terms of the 9 traits as listed officially, but the 9 traits don't actually deal with behavior. Okay, so as Ruthie was saying, silent treatment, sulking, etc. So you kind of look at the 9 traits and say, okay, well, that's your starter for 10. But then when you start doing the research, then you understand there are behaviors that you can look out for, and that should be considered red flags.
Okay. Do you want to name just a few of those? I mean, we did last week, but do you want to just name a few of those? But before you do, I know that Leanne has just private messaged me. She's got a question. So go ahead, Leanne.
Actually, my question follows along really well with this, is because of these behaviors and kind of this need for attention and control, do you think today's social media is kind of grooming children to become narcissistic because they're getting instant gratification for appearing perfect online? And how do you think that's going to affect future generations?
Okay, no
yes,
problem.
Please.
Well, again, the research I've read tells me that yes, social media fuels narcissism. Right. So, for example, if I'm online and I'm in one of my groups or another group and someone's causing a problem or being obnoxious or they're trolling in the group, first thing I'll do, I'll go to their personal page on Facebook. Say, oh, what's this person about then? And invariably, I will find 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 selfies on their personal page on Facebook. Because as someone mentioned earlier, attention. They strive on attention and validation. So in narcissistic terms, the craving for attention, which effectively is the drug of a narcissist, it's called narcissistic supply. But basically, that's just a posh way of saying they crave attention, just like a drug addict needs their fix. The narcissist needs their fix, and it doesn't have to necessarily be positive attention, positive or negative. It doesn't make any real difference to them.
That makes a lot of sense, Nigel, because sometimes it's almost like going back to the relationship I was talking about. It didn't really matter if it was good or bad attention. It really didn't, as long as they got the attention. And I just didn't realize at the time. Izzy, let's see if we can finally hear what it is that you've got to say.
Well, can you hear me now?
We can.
So I'm obviously not a narcissist because no one could hear me. I think your question was about relationships. I mean, God, I've had enough. I look at narcissism in terms of my industry as a professional. What is the fine line between on stage and narcissistic behavior? And the two go hand in hand, because I think in order to step out of a forum in front of other people and do what you do, you have to emulate a lot of confidence. The crucial trait that Nigel was mentioning, that I believe sets you up to know. Sorry?
We're all struggling here. We can't hear you properly, darling. We're going to have to get you on a different show. I am so sorry. Okay, right. So I've got this. Right. This is a question that I would like to ask you, Nigel. Please forgive me if it's not a question that you'd like to answer. But my question to you is, being so knowledgeable, when you are in a relationship, do you find it difficult to switch off and not psychoanalyze everything?
No, because at the end of the day, you can't walk around being paranoid, thinking everybody's a toxic, nasty narcissist. But on the other hand, I'm very empathic and I pick up energy. And I say to people, well, you know, sometimes you're not going to get an obvious red flag They may not be arrogant or have an adult tantrum. Sometimes you just get a vibe. Sometimes you just get a feeling. And I always say to people, pay attention to your intuition. Because even though you may not have any obvious red flags, if you get a vibe, something's not right. Your intuition doesn't lie. Simple as that, really.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I think it's probably a good time now to probably go to the ad break. And when we come back, I'm going to open the lines for people to call in. But I do want to quickly hear from you, Dave, because you've been a bit quiet.
I'm not sure of the rules yet. I don't want to be, to appear narcissistic. So
there are no rules. There's no rules. We're having a discussion, so it's a discussion.
Great. Okay. Well, sorry.
Do you have anything that you want to add before we go to the break?
I absolutely do. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist. I don't think I would have lasted more than a couple of days. But I've definitely had to work under them in the music business. Yeah, definitely. And I can see those traits that would come out. People who might blame everything on the musicians working under them, so that they are deflecting any attention on a mistake that they might make. I've bumped into that many times, So yeah, I'm starting to see how narcissists have appeared in my life. I was unaware of it before.
It's weird because the more and more we talk about it, is the more and more I think, my God, well, that person was, and that person was. And it's funny how you questioned and wondered if you yourself were, Dave, because at some point after last week, I was thinking, well, have I got those kind of traits? I don't know. But then when I ask some questions today, I don't think I do. So
Right. That is a sure sign that you're not a narcissist, surely. That that you would actually question yourself. A narcissist would never do that.
They won't, would they? I didn't even think of that. Okay.
That's 100% correct. Because basically a toxic narcissist is extremely self-absorbed, and they lack the ability for any self-reflection or introspection. So if someone's thinking, oh, am I a narcissist? They're very likely not the case, because they don't do that.
Okay. I mean, is that the only way to know? Because it's such a thin line in a way, isn't it?
Well, you say a thin line, but if someone, as Dave has just said, and you've just said, you kind of reflected to yourself, or, maybe I am a narcissist. But if you're thinking on those lines, then it's very likely that you're not, because they can't do that. They lack the ability for self-analysis, basically, and self-awareness. They have zero.
I find that so weird. I mean, how do you get through life without reflecting and trying to better yourself?
But ignorance is bliss, right? Can't you?
Well, when you look at one of the 9 traits, right? One of the 9 traits is lack of empathy. So basically, if you lack empathy, you don't really give about anybody else. You're just concerned about yourself. Okay. As I said to you before, their relationships are transactional. Doesn't matter if it's a romantic relationship, a work relationship. It's transactions for them. It's got nothing to do with, mutual respect or mutual cooperation. They just want to be king, or they just want to be queen of their little kingdom or fiefdom. That's their mindset.
Okay. Here's a question. And I don't know, maybe anyone can answer it, but it's to you, Nigel. The question: can a narcissist love anybody? Can they?
No.
Really?
No.
Not even their own child?
No.
Really?
As I said before, and I'll say it again, their relationships are transactional. It's a transaction. So if you've got a narcissistic parent, for example, then their children are seen as objects. In terms of the narcissist worldview, everyone's an object. Just like you pick up a glass, or you pick up your toaster, or you pick up a pair of scissors, everyone is considered an object. So therefore, if someone is considered an object, they can be used, and abused and discarded as the narcissist sees fit.
Wow.
We are objects. We're not people.
So it's pointless in someone thinking, oh, let's stay in the relationship, it will get better, blah, blah, blah. The minute you realize you really need to exit, don't you?
You need to get out ASAP, as soon as possible.
Okay. And on that tip, I'm about to go and get out the advert. We'll be back in a moment.
No, I was just about to say something.
No, we're going to let you say something, Ruthie. We are not going to leave you out. Go ahead.
Right, it was just that at the beginning, Nigel, I'm just watching, where you actually said that everybody has an element of narcissism in them. So are you just talking about somebody who's totally narcissistic, or are you talking about, because when you say that narcissists cannot love, then are you saying that nobody can love?
I did qualify. No, I did qualify that when I first started speaking, and my comments alluded to what Dave was saying. There is such a thing as healthy narcissism. So if you like nice clothes and you like somewhere nice to live, you've got good self-esteem, you've got high confidence, well, that's all healthy. That's all healthy stuff. And as I said before, it's when the narcissism is toxic and it is damaging or destroying other people, that's when it's a problem. Everyone's got narcissism in them. That is correct. When you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with someone who's got a very deep, black, empty hole inside of them, right? The Americans have a saying called empty suits. You're an empty suit, which basically means you are nothing of substance inside.
Wow.
And so going back to what Dave was saying about the actual myth in terms of the mask, that's what they present a mask to the world. They present a false persona. Okay. And they're so invested in that persona that when it begins to crumble, or if someone begins to suss them out, as Ruthie said, you're going to get the silent treatment, the sulking, the tantrum, or they'll leave and move on. You'll tend to find narcissists are very nomadic in terms of their relationships. Because once they get sussed out, they move on. They'll move on to another group of people or to another person.
So this is the very last question, and I guess it's a yes or no one, and I think you've answered it already. But then I have to go into, when it's a family member, do you still jog on? Do you?
Yes, because one of the things that I teach or I advise people is never let your loyalty become slavery. Because whether it's a family member, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a friend, in my book, if they're toxic, they've got to go.
Right. And on that tip, we are definitely going to the ad break. That's a good time to go to the ad break on. We'll be back in just under.
Have you experienced several failed relationships or been through a divorce? How can you avoid making the same mistakes again? How to avoid making the big relationship mistakes is out now. Now you can discover the dangerous myths about love are realistic, why you could be falling in love for all the wrong reasons.
How to avoid making the big relationship mistakes. It's a book that could change your life.
Available from amazon.co.uk. Kindle version also available.
And so we are back after the ad break. I hope it was long enough for you to probably get a drink or something like that. Okay, now this is the section where we will allow people to call in anonymously. So here's the number for you to make your calls on. Please do use the number. We do want to hear from you. And this is the section where you can ask absolutely any relationship question at all. And it doesn't have to be between, you know, couples. It can be between you and your parents, you and your children, you and a friend, blah, blah, blah. So the question I would like to ask, and I think I've vaguely heard this before, Nigel, is, am I right to say a narcissist as a friend or a family member or whatever can be maybe a good thing in the sense of if they are protecting you, they have no fear?
If they are protecting you, they have no fear. If they're protecting you, they have their own agenda.
Oh, right. Wow.
They don't do anything for anybody else unless there's something in it for them. That's how they roll.
Wow. It's not looking good for narcissists. It's not. Anyway, listen, guys, this is the section where we are talking. Let's get it on the roll.
Oh, great.
Just say whatever it is you want to say. Jump in when you can. And also to Facebook and YouTube, please send in your comments. We will answer them. We'll show them on screen. Or there's a number. Give us a call.
I have a question. How likely is it that you come across like a severe toxic narcissist? Is that something like, so from my past experience, am I like one and done? Like I'm just going to be safe for the future? Like statistically speaking, where do I land with this? Because like you said, everyone has a bit of narcissism. So I understand that there's a difference between people being a bit selfish or showing off, and then people who are actually narcissists. But how often do you come across, or I believe it was picked up earlier when Sam asked, am I likely to be targeted again? Am I that personality that attracts them?
Well, there are traits that can make a person susceptible to get involved with an abuser, you know, narcissist or otherwise. But the problem that we have is that narcissists are very unlikely to go for any type of diagnosis unless they're in some type of crisis, or unless their partner says, look, if you don't sort yourself out and go and see someone, I'm leaving. But even that, again, as I said before, that's going to be motivated by ulterior motives. And it's quite common that if a narcissist does go for a diagnosis, they will try and fool the therapist or the counselor, because everything for them is a competition.
So hold on, my next question, you've almost answered it, because I was going to say, is there any hope for a narcissist if they get counseling and help, and if they want to change, can they?
That will depend on where they are on the spectrum. So as I said before, it's measured on as 9 main traits. So obviously if they score 5, they're going to be classified as officially as a narcissist. Now, even if they score 4, they may not be officially diagnosed as a narcissist, but 4 is still pretty high on the scale. So obviously the higher up the scale they go, if they score 6, then obviously the higher they score, the less hope there is, basically. Wow. But going back to what the lady said earlier about the likelihood. Well, again, because they usually don't go for diagnosis as such. So everything's estimated, isn't it? So it's estimated that 1% of the general population, say of the UK, would have narcissism or toxic narcissism. So that's an estimate. If you look at the research for the clinical population, it's anything between 2% and 16%. So then if you look at the average population of the UK, 60 million people. Well, 60 million people at the high end of 16%, you're looking at 96,000 people. That's a lot of people.
Wow. You know, I've got to say, it's all very fascinating. Please go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, would you say, Nigel, another way to say narcissist would just be damn selfish?
Well, I can't swear on here, obviously.
Oh,
Self-serving.
I beg your pardon. Is that a swear?
Yeah, no, not me. I was going to say another term would be self-serving hole.
Right.
Because they're all about them. Because everything's about them. Everything is about them. It's really is as simple as that. And I want to go back to what Ruthie said earlier, actually, about he wouldn't take responsibility. He wouldn't accept any accountability. And then what Dave was saying about deflection. Those are all the tactics that they use, because despite they may come across as very arrogant, the reality is they have very fragile egos.
Right.
So if they get criticized, or whether that criticism is valid or it's perceived, they will suffer what they call a narcissistic injury. So the narcissistic injury, which basically just means they're peed off because you might have called them out, for example, on something. They get annoyed, so they have a narcissistic injury, and that narcissistic injury then leads to some of the behaviors that Ruthie was describing, i.e., silent treatment, sulking, temper tantrum. So those things, all of those type of behaviors are triggered by the narcissistic injury.
Yeah. You see, but I can sulk and I can do the silent thing. I know I'm guilty of that. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on myself, I think.
Yeah, but so can I. But for me, it's not, to me, I'm not sulking. If I see red flags, or if someone does something to me that I find unacceptable, because I'm one for healthy personal boundaries, because that's the only way you can protect yourself from abusive people. So if someone violates what I think are my personal rights, they're out. I don't care who they are. I think it could be family member, friend. I've got ex-friends now. I've got people I've cut off, known them 20 years, 30 years. Because my personal boundary, see you later. Because life's too short.
Yes, I agree.
You know, it's funny because a lot of people tend to confuse a narcissist with maybe a physical abuser or a rapist or something like that. But there's different types of abuse, isn't there?
Well, yeah. Well, obviously, when people talk about domestic abuse, they often jump to the conclusion, oh, it must be physical, must be domestic violence. But there's emotional abuse, there's psychological abuse, there's mental abuse, there's financial abuse for that matter. But what I should say is that not all abusers are narcissists.
That's what I
thought. But all narcissists are abusers.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So just because someone's an abuser doesn't necessarily mean to say they're a narcissist. But all narcissists will abuse someone in some shape or form or the other.
I just wanted to ask, Ruthie, you're very quiet today, so I wanted to ask you this question. If you came across a narcissist now, how would you deal with them?
Well, how I've always dealt with them, I call them out. I mean, the thing is that for me, I don't see any problem with dealing with them. When they're, you can recognize it. You know, somebody only wants to hear their own words. They only think about themselves. Something happens to you, and they're talking about how it reflects upon them, and so you can see it. So when I see it, I say it, and to be fair, I don't care if they get upset. I've been in relationships where somebody, you know, he stopped talking to me. I think of it as a let off for me.
Blessing. It's a blessing.
Yes, that's right. And so you're dealing with it, and you're trying to find a way to extricate yourself. And so that's what you do. But I mean, the thing where Nigel says for family members, I can deal with my family members, and as long as they know that I'm not going to put up with their nonsense, then we do fine. And the thing is that when somebody has a behavior, you can just tell them that's not acceptable to me, and I'm not going to deal with that behavior. And I don't deal with that behavior, but I'm not necessarily going to cut them off, but I will tell them, you're acting like this, out. But come back when you know yourself, or whatever.
That's my favorite. That is my absolute favorite. I never actually cut them off. I usually say to them, when you stop doing that, then you can come and find me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is what Ruthie's saying, and what you're saying as well, Sam. That's about healthy personal boundaries. A lot of times people get themselves in situations, and I'm guilty of it myself in the past. Sometimes we can be too accommodating. Sometimes it can be too people pleasing. All right. And if you don't have healthy personal boundaries, some people are going to take advantage of that. So
guys, I think we've got a caller. I think we've got a caller. Bear with me.
Okay.
Hello, caller.
Hello.
Can you hear
Hello?
us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, caller. Can you hear the caller, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, caller, what's your name?
If you don't mind, I'd like to remain anonymous for now.
That's absolutely fine. What's your question?
Yeah, well, I just logged into the show. There's other family issues going on, so I didn't actually realise it started at 7:30. I thought it would have been 8, but I don't know how deep you've gone into the show. I would just like to say something in response to the lady on the top right corner.
Caller, could we turn off your background interference so we can hear you better, please?
Okay, just a moment.
Thank you. I love it when we have a caller. We had John yesterday. I mean, last week. He ended up calling himself Jog on John. Bless him. I hope he's okay.
Yeah, that was a good call, actually.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I'm still here. Sorry.
Right.
I can hear myself talking right now.
Caller, you need to turn off your TV or your music, whatever's in the
whatever
background.
it is.
Oh, I need to turn it off.
Yes, because we can hear it and we can't hear you properly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. But I can't hear what's being said now.
No, that's okay. Right. So you will be able to hear them. Don't worry. So go ahead.
Yeah. In response to what the lady in the top right corner was saying about narcissists.
Yes.
Now, it's somewhat easier said than done, because when you are actually up close and personal with one, someone that is close to you in the family, it's not so easy to how can I put this? Not necessarily cut them off, but keep them at arm's length, because they're family. You know, and they're very manipulative. They're very good at making you feel bad. They have this habit of transferring what they're actually doing onto you, and then accusing you of actually doing the same thing that they're doing. So it's very difficult to navigate around them. You get what I'm saying?
Nigel, what would you say to that? And caller, can I just ask, is this your mother, your father, sister, brother, child?
Well, like I said, it's somebody close to me.
Right.
So it makes it that more difficult to just say, all right, I'm going to turn my back on you and walk away. It's not as easy as that. You
Nigel,
know, when
would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. As I said before, whether it's a family member, relationship, etc., you cannot allow your loyalty to become slavery. Because really and truly, the only way to deal with any type of abusive person is not to play. It's not, because it's not a game you're going to win.
1 second, Nigel. Caller, are you saying you cannot hear what Nigel is saying?
I can't hear what he's saying, no.
Okay, so Nigel is basically saying that you, whether it's a family member or not, he's saying that you still need to cut them off or stop them or keep them at a distance.
Yeah,
is that
keep them at a
correct?
distance.
Keep them at a distance, yes. Cut them off, yes. But the notion that you can stop them, I don't know how that would work, because in order to stop them would be to cut them off. And if you don't want to do that, it's difficult. So the only thing you can do is keep them at arm's length.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing you can. Yeah.
Well, that's fair enough. So if you keep them at arm's length, or you limit your interaction with them,
Yeah.
then that's fine. But at the end of the day,
it's very exhausting. It is very. Hello. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, we're both. You go ahead. You go ahead.
He's listening to you, caller.
Okay. Yeah. It's very exhausting. I can hear myself. Sorry.
That's
it's very. Hello.
You're saying it's very exhausting.
Yeah, it is very exhausting work. Because you know exactly what they're doing. It's weird because I'm hearing myself.
Well, in order for you to hear Nigel, I've had to turn up the speakers so you can hear him. So don't worry about hearing yourself, as long as you can hear him. You're saying it's very exhausting.
Yeah, it's very exhausting because you know exactly what they're doing, and it's right up in your face, and they're accusing you of doing the very thing that they are doing. And when you actually say to them that they're displaying narcissistic behavior, they deny it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I would like to know. Are these people actually aware of the fact that they are narcissistic? Are they actually aware?
Right. Well, let's unpack the first one first in terms of you being accused of what the other person's doing. That's called projection. Okay. And that's another tactic that they're very fond of besides deflection. I mean, they've got different tricks they use basically.
Yeah.
So projection is one of their favorites. Denying responsibility and refusing to be accountable is another one. And
oh God,
yes, if you're dealing with someone who is toxic, well, yes, it is going to be exhausting. Hence, that's why I said, well, really, the only way to win with a toxic person is not to play, or if you are reluctant to cut ties altogether, then obviously you have to limit your interaction. Really, it's one or the other. So it's really as simple as that. Because you're not going to change. They're not going to change for somebody else. So you can dismiss that notion. They do not change for anybody.
What I believe the caller is saying as well is that she feels that this person is so close to her that it's not right to try and get rid of them, that she wants to be around for them. But that's
the choice.
Second, what's happened is I think oh God, Nigel, you made me lose my trail there.
Sorry.
Never mind. It's okay. It's okay.
Can I say something?
Of course you can.
I find that there's always a difference between males and females when it comes to this. I just find that males are a bit more direct and precise. If I'm not doing it out, where most women that I speak to, they seem to be. It's not about accommodating. They're trying not to lose the relationship, that person doesn't fall flat. So I think it might be a bit of nurturing where you're trying to. You don't want to lose them. You don't want them to be out on their own. So you're doing what you can, but you're trying to make sure that when they are displaying those behaviors, that you deal with it. If they're trying to manipulate or if they're trying to deflect, you tell them you're actually deflecting and and then so you deal with the behaviors and that way you can still maintain a relationship. And I don't know if it is a difference between the sexes. I don't know, but I just find that men are less likely, or a lot of men are less likely to be as accommodating. And I don't like to use the word accommodating because I don't think that's the right word.
No, that's sounds fine. Sounds fine to me. But at the end of the day, here's the bottom line.
See?
Empathy without boundaries results in self-destruction. It's really as simple as that. If you are not operating your life with healthy personal boundaries and you have not got a clear idea in your head as to what is acceptable behavior and what is not acceptable behavior, then you're just setting yourself up for a lot of grief.
Right. Now, this is what I remembered as well, caller.
Okay.
And Nigel, this is what I remembered.
Is it okay? Hello?
Caller. 1 second,
Hello?
caller. 1 second, caller.
No, I just wanted to ask if it's okay if I can hang up now.
Oh, of course you can.
Yeah, because it's kind of weird talking to myself without not seeing you guys on the TV screen.
No problem. But I do want you to just stay here for 1 second, because what I was going to say to let Nigel be aware is I think you missed the part, because you came in later, of when I asked Nigel, is it possible for a narcissist to change? His answer was a direct no. No matter how much counseling they get, no matter what happens, they cannot change. They're actually sick, apparently.
Okay, so they cannot change, but can they be taught to recognize the fact that they are narcissistic, and whenever it's how can I say it, presenting itself, they can find ways, tactics by which they can control it, restrict it? You get what I'm trying to say? Or is it just going to be plain and out in your face all the time?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's if someone goes for a diagnosis, it's measured on a spectrum. So, so 5 out of 9, you're officially diagnosed. Obviously 6, you've got a 6. The higher up the scale the person goes, the less chance of any meaningful change. Simple as that.
Wow.
So it defeats the whole purpose of them going and seeking help then, doesn't it? If they can't be cured. Not even if they cannot find ways of curbing their...
What you missed, caller, is Nigel earlier on explained that they stop growing emotionally from between the ages of 6 and 7. So they're basically emotionally a child in an adult's body. But that's emotionally. They can still get jobs, which are great jobs. They can still operate and all the rest of it. But emotionally, they're still big kids.
Okay.
So they throw strops. They'll give you the silent treatment, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Okay.
But thank you so much for calling, caller. It's
You're
been
welcome.
very interesting hearing your side of things and what's been happening with you. I hope you can find some help from this and maybe know how to move forward. Thank you for calling.
Okay, thank you. I can put my TV back on now. Okay then. Bye.
Right. I do want to say a few hellos. I want to say hello to Eve Phillips. Lovely of you to join us again. Thank you. And Beverly, thank you for inviting Eve again. Hello to Info Reclamation, and hello to Lex. How you doing? Info Reclamation said you said wanting to be around for them, Sam. No, I didn't say that. Ruthie said that. Sounds like you're about to have a go, Info Reclamation, for wanting, for Ruthie saying she might want to be around for them. But I mean, this is certainly a very interesting topic, because I'm learning, I have to be honest, I'm learning now that there is no point, because I'm an empath, but there is no point, it sounds like, from what Nigel's saying, in trying to even help them. Because if a professional can't help them, well, you stand no chance, don't you?
No, that's correct. And in terms of empaths or having strong empathic traits, the worst nightmare relationship is between a narcissist and an empath, because empaths naturally want to help and be supportive and be caring and loving.
That's right.
And the narcissist is just going to lap that up all day long.
Oh God, and it takes so much energy from you. I done it for, I think, was it 5 or 6? It was 6 years.
Whew.
It was 6 years. And I've got to be honest, I was an emotional wreck after.
Yeah, you would be. You would be.
Because I'm always giving, trying to help, trying to lift up, and I was always being put down. And when they couldn't put me down because I had left, they started to talk to other people about me.
Well, that's called, the thing is with narcissists, right? Even though there are different types of narcissists, but they're very predictable, right? So what you're talking about there is called a smear campaign, right?
Right.
So if they can't get their own way, or if you do something to upset them, they'll run around telling people you're this and you're that and you're the other. So
But they were believed. They were believed.
Well, they would be, yeah, but they would be. But then at the end of the day, you got to look at it and say, someone who knows you well will know that they're lying, wouldn't they? Effectively. Because I've been subjected to more than one smear campaign because I, like Ruthie, I'll just say that's not acceptable. I might not necessarily say they're a narcissist, but if they're displaying behaviors towards me that I find unacceptable, I will say that's not acceptable. And if they want to run around with their little smear campaign, then so be it. And the other thing, in terms of the smear campaign, it's very common actually.
My business, though, Nigel, sorry to interject, that's very harmful. Wouldn't you agree, Dave?
Of course, it's harmful to those who don't know you, obviously, right? Because obviously, you know, especially if you're in the media or any type of industry, really, your reputation is important.
Yeah.
But what you have to understand with narcissists, right, whether the relationship's romantic or not, their relationships go through a particular cycle. So the cycle is idealize, devalue, discard. Now, when they're with a romantic partner and they start going through the devaluing stage. So the devaluing stage is when they start, before when they met you, oh, you were so lovely, you were the best thing since sliced bread. The very things that they liked about you,
my
apologies, start criticizing you for.
Sorry, Nigel, we have another caller online. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hello, caller. Would you like to say your name or give a false name?
A false name.
Okay, what's your name for today?
Lenny Henny.
Lenny Henny, I like it. Okay, so Lenny Henny, what is your question for today?
So I've been in a scenario and I wanted to know if this was narcissistic behavior. So how do I explain this? I can't hear you.
I'm listening to you. We're all listening to you.
So I've been in a situation where we was together, and when I met him, he was kind of moody, whatnot. I was trying everything that I could do to, you know, cheer him up, ask him questions, see how he was, and make sure he was okay. And so after a while, I thought, you know what? Let me just leave him for a bit because, you know, he's moody. He might not want to talk too much. And after a while, obviously, I had to go wherever I was going. So when I was leaving, he tried to be affectionate and be all upon me and you know, what's the word? Just be all affectionate when I was leaving. And I thought, obviously, if we've been there for so long, why are you now being like this when I've been trying with you, been doing all this to get us back to normal? And I thought that's kind of manipulative in a sense where, I don't know, is that narcissistic behavior?
Can I answer this, Nigel? I want to see if I've learned anything. Caller, I believe that is what they call the Hoover scenario. Is that right, Nigel?
Not really. No. What the lady is describing is known as intermittent reinforcement. So effectively, in abusive relationships, what the abuser will do, narcissist or not, they'll treat you nice for a period of time, then they'll treat you nasty. Then they'll treat you nice again. It's a cycle of hot and cold behavior, right? So eventually, the person subjected to this, they begin to chase the good times, keep chasing the honeymoon period when the abuser was being nice to them. And there's also biochemical issues going on there as well. But effectively, it's called intermittent reinforcement. And like coming from London myself, back in the day, we would say, oh, treat them mean to keep them keen. That was kind of one of the jokey sayings that went around. But basically, it's intermittent reinforcement, hot and cold behavior.
So you're saying because when she decided to leave him,
Mm.
he decided to be nice to her, that's what you're calling the intermittent reinforcement?
Depending on whether she had left totally or not. If it's a case she decided to draw a couple of boundaries, and he didn't like it, then I suppose you could describe it as a mini Hoover then, for want of a better phrase, because obviously they're still involved. But if someone's actually left, or they've been left by the narcissist, which is called the discard, they are known to come back and try and rekindle the relationship again. And that could happen 2 months later, 2 years later. I had a guest on my podcast show, her narcissist returned after 15 years. She hadn't heard from him for 15 years, and he turned back up.
So in answer to the caller's question, then, yes, that is narcissistic behavior, caller.
Yes. Abusive behavior, certainly.
Caller?
Hello, sorry, yeah.
That's okay. Does that answer your question, and do you have any more?
That does answer my question, thank you. But no, that was just the main thing right now.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to call. I hope we have helped.
Thank you.
Okay,
bye.
Wow, guys, this has happened again. We are at the end. We've gone over by 10 minutes, actually.
Wow.
It's not surprising.
Good subject.
In fact, over by 12 minutes. Let's be completely correct here. So I just want to quickly just ask you, Ruth, Leanna, and Dave, starting off with Dave, and please make it short, right? What do you think you've learned today?
With me first? Yeah. I've learned that narcissism is quite an umbrella term. And I've learned that we all have a bit of the narcissist within us. That's what I think.
Right. Okay. Ruth?
I've learned that I don't have any narcissism in me. Thank you very much. No, no, that's a lie. That's a lie.
any toxic narcissism.
Well, I wanted to ask a question, but we're out of time, about the difference between self-love and narcissism, because they're not the same.
Yeah, no, well, that was Nigel said that earlier. Remember, he said, self-love, so long as it's not hurting anybody else, is fine.
Yes, but when you talk about things like being confident and so forth, and some of the things that has been said about it being maybe a narcissistic trait, whereas other people would consider it self-love, so I don't know. But anyway, I've learned that I don't know what a narcissist is. I do know what some narcissistic traits are.
Well, I would say quickly, there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Nothing wrong with being confident.
I agree.
But if someone's arrogant, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Liana.
I guess I just learned how manipulative a narcissist really is, because they have a very attractive personality to start with, and then it kind of changes. And I guess what I've learned is that when you see the change, that should be what encourages you to set the boundaries, and that setting the boundaries as soon as possible, or possibly cutting the narcissist out of your life, is the best option. That's it. If possible, that's such a good life lesson. Especially, I'm still learning my way to get through life, so that's a good way to know that, moving forward, boundaries really important, and then also kind of the signs to kind of get through it, because you're always attracted to big personalities, but sometimes that comes with caveats of not so nice parts of personalities as well. So that's what I've learned tonight. So
to be honest, the one thing I've definitely learned today is that it doesn't matter how caring you are and how much you want to help someone. If you do recognize that they're a narcissist, you do need to cut the ties, or at least put them at arm's length, so that it's not disrupting your spirit, as it were, if you like. Because I've learned, what I've learned, which has amazed me actually, and I didn't realize, is that they cannot be helped. They cannot change. And that to me is like, wow, really? But if they cannot, then you may as well do self-preservation. Otherwise you're going to go down. Now, Beverly Brown, it starts at 7:30 p.m. Beverly Brown, and Info Reclamation is saying that we should do a part 2. But Info Reclamation, we are here for the next 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to be discussing infidelity and polyamorism, or polyamory. Sorry, and who knows, we may touch on narcissism again, because I've got a question about that, Nigel, and I will leave you to answer it next week. But my question is, in regards to polyamorous, I mean, that's just the fancy name, I think, for open relationships. I think that's a perfect ground for a narcissist. That's just my take on it. I'm not knocking it, but I would imagine if you're allowed to have 2 or 3 partners where you're getting all that attention and all the rest of it and blah. But anyway, right. So I'm going to come to a close, because if I don't, we're going to be here forever and ever. Amen. But before we do come to that close, Nigel, would you like to do the closing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the final thing I would say is in terms of people don't change. Narcissists don't change. All that happens is the mask falls off, because you have to understand what they're presenting to you in the first instance is fake anyway. It's just but no one can act forever. No one can be an actor or an actress forever. Sooner or later, the real them, the true them, the toxic them is going to be revealed. So it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Wow. I mean, Info Reclamation is just written, just realized the friend that I've known for years, I just thought they were just a control. Now I know. Thank you. You know, Info Reclamation, you are not on your own. I think everyone sitting on this panel has realized that actually we've got narcissists either in our family, or maybe it's our partner, or maybe it's a friend, or it could be a child. You know, at the end of the day, I think we've all come up with that one, Info Reclamation, that we've realized, ping, we've got one around us. So, you know, at least hopefully it's opened the eyes of everyone and we can do something about that. I'm coming to a close. I can't believe that I've gone over like this. I did so well last week. Guys, it's time for us to go. Please wave goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Next week.
Some brilliant guests tonight.
The reason why we are on lockdown has nothing to do with the fact of building our immune system.
Try something else for a bit, then stop. So they've been using us all as guinea pigs.
What I will do differently now is that I won't feel like I haven't got a voice because I'm not Black.
Everybody's going to be dead at the same time.
I have never spoken about Black on Black because it's a nonsense, because most crimes are committed by non-Blacks.
Let that child go to school and come back with anything and see me.
Please, I just want everyone to know this is something that's very important, okay? That you must. If you've been affected by this show in any way, shape at all, please, you can contact the Samaritans, or you can contact a group I believe that Nigel is in, and I'm going to ask Nigel to quickly give out the details before we do go anywhere.
Our Facebook group is called Reflections on Abusive Relationships, RAW for short, ROAR, and we're on Facebook.
Thank you very, very much, Nigel. Good night, everybody, and God bless.
Good night.